Hello, everyone. Now, I know that it's hard to keep up on top of what's going on in the Holy Land, but if you want to know more about what's happening here in Israel, I'm Aaron Porras, and this is the Weekly Review.
To lockdown or not to lockdown? That's the question. The Jewish high holidays are swiftly approaching, and lawmakers just can't agree on how Israelis will celebrate. The COVID-19 cabinet is set to meet today to discuss as the daily infection rate nears 4,000 cases. Israeli hospitals are also saying they're getting close to capacity. In addition to the increase in infection rates, nearly 500 people are in serious condition, and the death toll surpassing 1,050. The health ministry is recommending banning intercity travel and requiring the holidays to be celebrated with immediate family only, no more than 10 people.
הגבלת התנועה תהיה מערב החג עד צאת החג, ואני חושב שאנחנו נצטרך לנקוט בצעדים אפילו חמורים יותר, משום שאנחנו לא יכולים להרשות לעצמנו להמשיך בתחלואה כזאת, כשלצערי אנחנו עלולים להתקרב למקום שלא יהיה מענה מספק טוב.
In response, the finance ministry warning that a nationwide lockdown would cost the country between 4 and 6 billion shekels. Earlier this week on Tuesday, a curfew was implemented in around 40 cities and neighborhoods, mostly Arab and ultra-Orthodox, an effort to control the spread of the virus in areas with the highest infection rates. Unfortunately, there have been several incidents of not following the rules, and police have distributed more than 1,000 health ministry fines in the last 24 hours alone. Meanwhile, about 500 more IDF soldiers have joined the fight against COVID-19, according to the Defense Ministry, working with police to oversee the restrictions are being followed by the public. That is in addition to 5,000 previously brought in. Nittany Manson, ILTV.
In other news, the whole world is waiting for a coronavirus vaccine, and Israeli researchers are among the front of the pack. But a new and troubling survey raises the question, will enough people even take it? As we inch closer and closer to an inoculation for the COVID-19 virus, it turns out that at least a fifth of Israelis would opt out from such a treatment. According to a new survey by the Israeli Asuta Medical Center, just 75% of Israeli citizens would agree to receive a vaccine were it available today. And this percentage maintains across the general Jewish population. But participation drops even lower among the Arab Israeli population, with just 70% saying that they'd be willing to get the shot, and lower still among the ultra-Orthodox or Haredi Jewish community, with only 64% saying that they'd feel safe taking the vaccine. Well, officials at Asuta say that they are deeply troubled by the results, large gaps in inoculating the public making it difficult for herd immunity to set in, or the point at which a virus fails to spread because there are too few unvaccinated individuals to carry it. In any case, though, Israel's Institute for Biological Research, under the umbrella of the Israel Defense Forces, plans to begin testing its latest vaccine iteration in human trials this October. So how many people actually need to participate in a vaccine treatment for a vaccine to work effectively? Joining us to discuss is immunologist from Tel Aviv's Bar-Ilan University, Professor Cyril Cohen. Professor, thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
All right, so we just learned from the Asuta's medical report that around a quarter of Israelis might refuse to take a COVID-19 vaccine. So is 75% immunization enough?
That's a good question. The goal is to reach what we call herd immunity.
Right.
And the point is really dependent on what will be the efficacy of the vaccine. If you have a vaccine that is 100% efficient, that will mean that, of course, if you reach 70 or 75% of participation in the public, you will reach 70 to 75% of immunity, and that's enough, more or less, for herd immunity. But in the event of the vaccine being something around 80% efficient, now you're going to have a problem if only 70 to 75% of the population will take the vaccine, because then if you multiply those two numbers, you will reach only 50 to 60% of the people being immunized, and then it may be very difficult to get to herd immunity.
So, what do we do if we don't reach herd immunity? Because, and as you said, what's the likelihood of the vaccine not being 100% effective?
So the point is that we have other diseases, like, for example, the flu, in which we don't have necessarily herd immunity.
Sure.
So that would only mean that you will have a proportion of the people that will get vaccinated that will be immune to the virus. And hopefully this will be what we call the people at risk. And then you will have another proportion of the people that will get the vaccine, I hope a small proportion, but that won't be efficient. And then you will have the only remaining part of those people that didn't get the vaccine that won't be immune, and that will be what we see today.
Well, am I also correct in assuming that, of the 70 people who participated, 70% of the people who participated in the survey and said that they would get immunized, will all of them actually get immunized?
No, that you can say in advance. I also want to say a few things. First, there is another poll by Professor Gil Sigal that showed that 90% actually of the public in Israel is willing to get immunized. So
where's the disparity?
So I think that's the point. One of the first, of course, these are samples. Okay, you take 500 people here, 500 people there. But the other thing is that you have to take into account that we don't know which vaccine we're going to get. So I think that from the moment we will know that, those percentages might shift.
So what are the risks associated with getting the vaccine? What are the concerns and how might you address those?
I think that some people are just afraid of the unknown. I think that, if you go back 200 years back with the first vaccine, what we call the smallpox vaccine by Edward Jenner, you already see that the public, was kind of reluctant to take the vaccine. So it's nothing new today. People are afraid to have something injected in their body. People are afraid that it won't work. People are afraid that it will actually cause a disease to be more severe. You hear things like that with other vaccines. So basically, we have to fight that. Again, in general, when I'm talking about vaccines, you have to explain, you have to give information. That's a bad thing. Now, if we're talking in particular regarding this vaccine, we don't know exactly what this vaccine is going to be. There are so many technologies, new technologies, so we have to wait and see what the vaccine is going to be, and then we will try and explain to the people that is very important.
All right, Professor Cohen, thanks for shedding light on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Israeli police spokesperson, Superintendent Mickey Rosenfeld. Mickey, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
All right, now, how many police took part in the curfew that started last night?
In yesterday's first evening of closure and lockdown, there were more than 3,000 police officers that were deployed in those 40 different cities, areas, and neighborhoods where police units were carrying out spot checks in order to make sure that there was a minimum amount of movement based on the new government and cabinet corona decision that was made yesterday, which is being implemented for the next week, in fact, in order to try and take control of the situation and make sure that the public understands the seriousness and maintain the situation as much as possible by using Israeli National Police and its units at the scene.
So what means have you been using to enforce these closures along the borders?
Well, there were police officers that shut down different areas, which were in fact shut down both by police cars, as well as a lot of activity inside the different neighborhoods as well, preventing people from coming and going. The idea is, in those specific areas where the numbers are so incredibly high, our officers are at the scene asking people where they're coming, where they're going, where they're meant to be, and making sure that the individuals themselves, I'm talking about the majority of the public who need to be inside those areas during the evening, are in fact at home where they should be. And the reason for this being is that when we've looked back over the last 2 days, and in fact looked back over almost a week, we've seen the incredible number of people that have been affected by COVID-19 due to the fact that people have been gathering both at weddings as well as in different areas within the cities themselves.
All right, well, now I understand that you actually broke up 7 weddings yesterday, but that's nothing compared to whole cities that have refused to be closed during quarantine. There are schools in Bnei Brak that continue to operate as usual. Nazareth Mayor Ali Salam said this morning that he opposes the closure of his city and will open as usual as well. What can or will the police be doing to combat these types of negating regulations?
Well, together with the public, we're now at a new situation and a new phase. We want to make sure that the numbers will go down as quick as possible and as much as possible in order to prevent the hospitals from being filled, those specific wards where if the numbers go high and there won't be enough equipment, then we're going to have some serious problems. And unfortunately, the number of people that will die from COVID-19 will be incredibly high. So we're coordinating, back to your question, we're coordinating first of all with the leaders of the different communities to understand the new rules and regulations and to try and make sure that we're messaging to the public together with the leaders of the mayors and the councils of the importance of staying home and staying in those specific areas. Of course, people are allowed to move around for a number of different reasons, such as essentials, going to the hospitals, doctors, and other essential needs if they need that.
All right, and what about for the holidays? Are you planning to impose any holiday lockdowns? Have you received any word of that yet?
Well, as of now, we're taking things day by day. We're waiting for the cabinet to make their final decisions, which will probably be in another couple of days, about what will happen for the festivals. But the Israeli National Police are ready to implement more new rules and regulations if necessary, including a full lockdown across the country.
All right, Superintendent Mickey Rosenfeld, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Moving on, a tough story of cover-ups and conspiracies, but even tougher for the family of the victim, who have been fighting for justice for nearly 3 years. Israeli Public Security Minister Amir Ohana is now calling for fresh investigations into a January 2017 incident resulting in the death of an Israeli police officer and a Bedouin teacher. The Bedouin Israeli in question, Yaqub Abu Al-Kiyan, finally vindicated in light of new evidence, appearing to prove his innocence in what was originally labeled a terrorist car ramming attack.
אני קיבלתי דיווח, שאלתי 3 פעמים את המשטרה וקיבלתי דיווח מלשכת המפכ"ל שזה היה דריסה של פיגוע טרור. ואני היום, ואחר כך שהתברר שזה לא כל כך מובן מאליו, ביקשתי להמתין לסוף, אבל הסוף לא הגיע. אז אני רוצה קודם כל להגיד בשמי, אני רוצה להביע התנצלות למשפחת אלקיעאן, שאבי המשפחה, אזרח ישראל, נהרג. אמרו שהוא מחבל, אתמול התברר שהוא לא מחבל. אתמול התברר שבכירי הפרקליטות והמשטרה הפכו אותו למחבל.
As the Bedouin village of al-Khiran was being readied for demolition in 2017, Al-Kiyan ran over a group of police officers in the village, killing one of them, Sergeant Erez Levi. Al-Kiyan was then subsequently shot dead. But accounts of the incident instantly diverged, the police claiming that it was a vehicular terror attack, while others claimed that he was shot first, causing him to lose control of the car. And now, following troubling Israeli media revelations, it looks as though the 47-year-old father of 12 was in fact not a terrorist. But it was reportedly decided then to continue the terrorist narrative so as not to hurt the police's image while they investigated Prime Minister Netanyahu. Netanyahu, for his part, is blasting the alleged corruption under which the police conducted their probes against him for the second time this week, adding dire warnings for us all.
פרקליט המדינה אומר באימייל שלו שהם קוברים חקירות, מעוותים את הצדק, מעוותים את האמת, מסיבות פוליטיות לפי מה שנוח להם. אתמול הייתה עוד דוגמה בדיוק לדבר הזה. הפרקליטות והמשטרה לקחו אזרח ישראלי שבפעם הראשונה נהרג בטעות, בפעם השנייה עשו לו רצח אופי לאחר מותו, הפכו אותו למחבל רק כדי לפגוע בי. אני אומר לך ואני אומר לכם, אזרחי ישראל, אם זה מה שעשו לי וזה מה שעשו למשפחת אלקיעני, מה הם עושים יום יום לאזרחי ישראל? אם זה מה שהם כותבים באימייל, סליחה, מהמקפצה, מה הם אומרים אחד לשני בחדרי חדרים? אני חושב שמה שחשוב שיהיה כאן מיד זה חקירה עצמאית, בלתי תלויה, חקירה אמיתית, שתביא לבירור האמת, כי זו הדרך היחידה להחזיר את האמון לשלטון החוק.
It's not a bird or a plane or cats and dogs. It's marijuana. Last week in Tel Aviv, a drone launched hundreds of baggies of cannabis from the sky to the confusion of onlookers. The stunt was organized by activists fighting for the drug to be legal. Israel police arrested the 2 men following the drop and released a statement alleging the men were distributing a dangerous drug. Currently, medical use of cannabis is permitted in Israel, while recreational use is illegal, but largely decriminalized.
Living in the Holy Land, you can't help but hear a lot about the founding fathers and mothers of the Abrahamic faiths. Yet the Old Testament Bible only names a handful of the women. So Israeli photographer Dikla Laor set out to give her forebears some well-deserved time in the spotlight. Nittany Manson with the story.
Nearly everyone's heard the names and even the stories of Sarah, Leah, Rebecca, and Rachel. But what about Tafath and Basmath, or Dinah, Baar, and Queen Tephanes? Well, while the first group may be more recognizable, they all come from important women in the Old Testament. And Israeli photographer Dikla Laor wants to give them all their 15 minutes with her series of amazing photographs titled Women of the Bible. In the series, Laor dresses and stages herself, her friends, her family, and other real women as female characters from the holy texts, while creating settings that help tell their stories. Take this photo, for example, in which Laor portrays the wives of Noah's sons, charged with helping repopulate the earth after the Great Flood. Laor calls them the new Eves and decides to dress them in green to signify rebirth and new life. Then here, Laor herself takes on the role of Hannah, the mother of Samuel. Clad in a gorgeous flowing blue robe, Laor says she symbolizes purity. And there are many more where those come from, despite many of the women not even having names. In fact, women who are named in the Bible make up just 5.5 to 8% of the text. So where can you find these incredible images? After working for 6 years on the initial project, Laor's first Women of the Bible album was published in 2019, and she's now working hard to release the second collection.
And joining us now with a behind-the-scenes look at the amazing Women of the Bible photo series is Israeli photographer Dikla Laor. Dikla, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Hi.
Hello and welcome. So first off, your first album was published in April 2019. When is the second volume of Women of the Bible coming out?
Well, I hope the second book will be out, published in about 2 years from now.
Oh wow! So this is a really big project then.
It's a really big project. The first book took me 6 years to make, and now everything is getting faster. So hopefully, really 2 years will take me to be able to make the second one.
Well, so how many books do you have in mind? Because I know you have 2 books right now. Obviously, the second book is still in the works. Do you plan to continue this, further?
Well, actually, I'm not really counting my work in books. I'm planning. My goal is to picture all the women in the Bible, hopefully. So it's not really. I'm not counting the books I'm planning to make.
So how many women have you counted through the Bible, and how many have you photographed so far?
Well, there is not an exact number I can say of how many women there are in the Bible. Approximately 200, and I've already taken 61 pictures that are 78 characters till now.
Wow, and I understand. We watched just now the earlier piece mentioning how you photograph yourself, your family. I saw your mother and your son in one photo. But you don't use models. Why is that?
Well, actually, it's easier for me. Well, when I'm studying the picture, the character, and when I have the picture in my mind through studying, I already have it with the model, with the one that is going to play the character. So it's only natural that it will be someone I know.
Wow. And what inspired you to do this project in the first place? Because again, you've been working on this for 7 years now.
Well, yeah, the last project I had before that one was called Never Ending Story. It was women from mythologies, from legends, literature. And the last picture in that project was Job's wife, as me. And the moment I pictured that one is when I had the idea to leave the women from the whole world and start focusing on the women from our Bible. That's how the idea came.
All right. Well, it's a gorgeous collection. If you don't, everybody who's watching, if you don't own the first, go check it out. Women of the Bible, the first volume, second volume coming out in a year or two. Dikla, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye. Now, with only approximately 500 female green turtles and 2,000 female loggerhead turtles left in the Mediterranean, sea turtles in the region are officially endangered. And pollution, overfishing, predators, and other man-made obstacles are killing what numbers they have left. Luckily, though, there are organizations out there trying their best to protect these majestic creatures, and the Israeli Nature and Parks Authority being one of them. Nittany Manson with the details.
Each year, starting around May, sea turtles lay their eggs on Israeli beaches. And come August, those very beaches become home to hundreds of tiny turtles. Unfortunately, not all the baby turtles will make it to the water's edge, and of those, only a fraction make it into adulthood. This is where the Israel Nature and Parks Authority comes in. Once the nests are made, Parks Authority members will scour the beaches, locating and moving these nests to safer locations. Once the babies are ready to start their long journey to the water, they'll dig themselves out of their almost 3-foot deep nests. And sometimes this on its own can prove too much for some of the turtles. So Parks Authority members will come around a few days post-hatch and dig down just to make sure everyone's made it out. And sometimes they'll find a straggler or two. The journey then begins, the long walk along the beach being an important step on its own, allowing the turtle to imprint on this exact beach so that it knows where to come back to when it's ready to lay eggs of its own.
Now, if you thought flying cars were a figment of your imagination, think again. Israeli company Urban Aeronautics is developing exactly that. In fact, that vehicle is so close to being market ready, and the company has big plans. They have already signed a deal to create the first ambulance in the sky. The company announcing earlier this month that it signed an agreement with the United States-based emergency air response service, Hatzalah Air, to develop, produce, and market its City Hawk aircraft for emergency medical service applications. And that's it for ILTV's Weekly Review. I'm Aaron Porras. See you next week.